Welcome back to the Flick and the Bozman show. I'm saying welcome back if you listen to episode 2. There's no way you can't listen to episode 3 because you got to hear the Bozman take it from his 4 joyful moments down to a winner. So how's it going there, Dave?
It's going awesome, Phil. It's going awesome. I can't wait to see how this is going to end.
You
I
don't know?
haven't figured it out yet.
That's good. And then we are going to spend some time talking about our favorite teams, mine the Jets and yours the Giants, and what they may do in the draft later on this week. And we're even going to cover what the Steelers might do. And you'll figure out why we talk about them a little bit later on. But we got to get right into the Final Four. So I'm going to recap what's left and the two matchups. We have a battle of number 1 seeds as the Mets winning Game 6 in 1986 will take on the U.S. Olympic hockey win over Russia and then ultimately winning the gold medal, the number 1 seed. So a battle of number 1s. And then in the other matchup, we have DeGrom winning 2 Cy Youngs in 2018 and 2019. And the Mike Piazza post 9/11 home run for the Mets. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think the more intriguing matchup is the two number 1 seeds. So we may as well start there. Um, you know, we've talked about both of these events, and they both have the similarity of not being quite the ultimate championship moment, right? The both teams had one more game to win, or they would take it to their effing grave, in the words of Herb Brooks. Um, and they both won the games, so that's largely, or at least not largely, but that is at least partially why both of these are still relevant games. I said before too that something like Andy Chavez's catch. If the Mets go on to win that game, Gary Cohn's great call of that game, of that play, was exactly right. If the Mets win the game, that may be the play of franchise history, and now it's just another footnote because they lost the game. Game 6, Buckner, the ball goes through Buckner's legs, and the Mets go on to win the game, and it's just craziness. That was the ultimate moment of a great team that probably should have won more than one World Series. Had the playoffs been expanded, they probably would have made the playoffs, I think, 4 or 5 times between 1984 and 1990. But they made it twice, and they had the heartbreaking loss in 88 and the thrilling victory in 86 that had many twists and turns once they got to the postseason. The regular
Does it make it any more of a moment that it was their only win of that era?
I think so. Yes and no, I guess. From one standpoint, and we talked about on the heartbreak side, partly a heartbreak was that Gooden and Strawberry should have been, Hall of Fame players with that kind of talent they had, and between the injuries and the drugs and whatever else, they wasted it. And similarly, the Mets, wasted that talented team. Wasted might not be the right word, but they only ended up with the one win. And yeah, it does make it more special, certainly. But there's also that tinge of regret that they should have gotten something more out of it. So, you go with the Olympic hockey team. That was quite a moment and quite a run. You mentioned looking for anything to knock this down a peg. None of us saw it live. The number of people that saw it live were the number of people that fit into the arena. We were 10, 11 years old at the time. And then the other part of it is that team was only made for that 2-week period, and the guys went their separate ways, and some of them had, okay careers in the NHL, and most of them didn't. So I think from that perspective, the Mets were probably going to always win this matchup, given my propensity for loving the Mets. It's a close matchup, though. I mean, that Olympic game that was awesome. And again, Al Michaels described it perfectly. Of the entire country was rooting for this to happen. Uh,
Yeah, and
it was
I
cool.
think our age and our preference for baseball over hockey, even if it's Olympic hockey, and what's a couple people who listen said, "Oh, you were wrong about this guy. You didn't remember this guy in the hockey," and that we shouldn't. There's no reason we should because that wasn't a team that stayed together a long time. Where if we look at the Mets scoring 3 runs, you could probably go through and name everyone who hit that inning and what they did, just because you know those guys so well.
Yeah,
And
I just was thinking of the great line that actually Ron Darling quoted when Gary Carter announced that he had cancer that ultimately cost him his life a number of years ago. He said, he knew that Gary was never going to quit fighting because he was the guy in that game that said, "I'm not making the last out," and that started the thing off. Uh,
yeah,
and that was the
with with 2 outs, Carter got a single. Take it from there by memory.
oh god no, I couldn't.
I got it written down,
I
but I didn't need to write a lot of it.
I honestly couldn't. The only thing I remember, I know Ray Knight got a big hit, and then he was the one that ended up scoring the big run.
He actually scored the winning run.
Right.
I'll argue that the big run may have been the one that scored on the wild pitch when Mookie was batting.
Yeah, yeah, Schiraldi, right? Yeah, the former Met, right? Wild pitched it home, and then they brought in Bob Stanley.
Yeah.
Am I remembering that right?
Well, Stanley threw the wild pitch.
Oh, I'm sorry, the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay, right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Schiraldi, if you look at the box score, Schiraldi almost blew the save twice if you want to get technical because he came into the game in the 8th. What he was still doing in the 10th, who knows, but there was some questionable managing. But he came in, and it may have been Carter hit a sac fly to score Mazzilli, who was in there pinch running
oh
or
yeah,
got on base. And so the Mets tied it at 3. The Red Sox score 2 in the top of the in the 10th, and then the Mets are up. Backman and Hernandez go get the first 2 outs. Carter got a single. Mitchell, who was pinch hitting for Rick Aguilera, who looked to be the losing pitcher at the time. Mitchell pinch hit for him, got a single. Carter went to second. Then Knight got a single. Carter scored, and what turned out to be a big deal on that play is that Mitchell got to third
right.
because then he was able to score on the wild pitch.
Yep, yep. And then the infamous ball getting by Buckner. Yeah,
Exactly.
the wild pitch was definitely an underappreciated moment in that because that did tie the game, and that led to the Red Sox big choke, if you want to say it from that perspective. Uh, and so that was great, great theater and a great moment. Um, and again, fortunately, the Mets did fulfill their destiny for what would they win 108 games in the regular season, and
I think if you're off at all, you're off by a game or two. And
yeah, uh, for a team that great, they really needed to win. You remember the Seattle team was in 2001 that won like 115 games and then lost in the first round of the playoffs. Like, who cares?
yeah,
Um,
you could look at Golden State having the record for wins in a season, and that happened to be a year they didn't win in the
right?
NBA.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So the Mets
well,
advanced.
that's I could see the Olympic hockey team giving them a good run, but yeah, I think I expected the Mets to move on to the finals here.
Yeah, yeah. On the other side of the bracket, I really didn't have a lot of thought to DeGrom's Cy Young's moving on. I love watching him pitch, as we talked about the other day. He's an artist. He's a master. I love his tenacity. I love the fact that he will give you a good chance to win even when he doesn't have his good stuff. Um, and I hope to watch him, enjoy watching him pitch for the next, 5, 7, 8 years for the Mets. None of those things are are guaranteed. Um, but the Piazza home run was just such an epic moment in the course of my life. I guess I don't want to comment on it too much now, again, unless that's going to move on. So I'm going to sort of comment on it going into the matchup of the finals, if you want to do that, unless you had any questions.
No, I think it deserves to get into the finals as well. As like you said, as good as DeGrom is, the Piazza home run probably got seeded incorrectly by the committee, which would be me.
And
So,
listen,
but
one quick word on
yeah,
DeGrom. I had put in one of the moments that got knocked out early was in his rookie year when he struck out the 8 straight Marlins to start the game. And I remember where I was when that happened, just listening to it. And actually stopped the car because I think I was afraid of getting out of range of WFAN at the time, and just thought, I'm just going to listen to this until he doesn't strike somebody out. It was awesome. It was such a moment. And then the guy he didn't strike out was the opposing pitcher for the Marlins.
pitcher.
Come on. I was already counting on him, facing the top of the 4th and going for Seaver's record of 10 in a row.
Oh, that was a great moment, and like you said, hopefully there's a ton more of them for DeGrom. But
Yeah.
it's been sweet up to this point. Could have been better if the team did more for him, but
Yep.
It is what it is, and he still won 2 Cy Youngs, and um, it beat some good moments in this bracket that I mentioned last time. The
Yeah.
wide right Super Bowl and the Mets game 7, which you
Yeah.
touched on earlier. But I would say in that half of the bracket, I expected the helmet catch to do a little better and maybe even make it to the final. But it's hard to argue with Piazza, the September 21st home run. So
Yeah.
it sounds like that's moving on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got all Mets in the finals.
All Mets. That and again, that's, I think, certainly I tried not to think about it. I think you said the same thing on the bracket of pain, but I tried not to think about it ahead of time and just, let me sit down and see what do I think of these 2 moments and or events, and what do they mean to me. So, I was thinking about this over the last couple of days, particularly the Piazza home run of, why does this mean so much to me? And as you well remember, on the morning of September 11th, who was I on the phone with? I was on the phone with you.
Talking nonsense, I'm sure.
Talking nonsense. I'm sure probably the Mets or the Giants or the Jets or something like that. And I was in my new office that I just moved there a few weeks before, basically across the street from the World Trade Center. And I heard this loud crash. And I said, hold on a second, Phil. I think somebody just blew up the World Trade Center. And went to look out the window, and there's debris everywhere and paper and debris floating up in the air. And I said, I think I got to go. And that was a day. My wife was at the time, I think, almost 7 months pregnant with our twins, and home in New Jersey, and trying to figure out how I was going to get home. At the time, it was a moment when you just go, the first plane hit the tower, and I talked to the people in the office, and we were like, well, it's just the one plane. Let's just sit tight. And then the second plane hit. And we're like, okay, we're out of here. Time to go. Made our way down, 50 flights of stairs or whatever it was, and started walking our way uptown. I don't want to go into it too much, but that was a day, and it was a time, and it was a really difficult time for me, and I didn't really want to necessarily go into that and relive that with this whole joy thing, but that's part of the experience when 10 days later the Mets are playing against the Braves, the hated Braves that I had just loathed rooting, seeing on TV, and loved rooting against over the last 10, 12 years, ever since they started getting good again and moving. I think they actually moved them from the West to the East when they went to the 3 divisions. And they became interdivision rivals. And of course, it's Chipper Jones, and it's the Braves, and it's the Braves came back, and everybody's wearing their FDNY hats and their NY Fire Department and New York Police Department hats and the Transit Port Authority hats and so forth. and the national anthem and the God Bless America and Liza Minnelli singing New York, New York, and doing a chorus line with the police officers and so forth. It was surreal. It was just such a day I'll never forget it. And they're losing the game. Um, and was it the seventh in bottom of the seventh or bottom of the eighth that Piazza came up?
I want to say the eighth, but
Yeah,
yeah, if you told me it was the seventh, I wouldn't be too surprised.
yeah.
I know relievers were in because Carsey was in, right, for the Braves.
Arce was in for the Braves. Yeah. And Piazza just launched it. I think it hit the light tower or the camera tower in left center field. And from the moment he hit it, you just go, that ball was obliterated. Uh, and that that was that had a lot to do with me sort of getting out of a personal funk or depression I was in for that 10-day period. And I know Piazza himself has said how many hundreds and hundreds of people that have come up to him and said that home run meant a lot to them and it helped them. It helped me. It helped me in a major way, in a way that no other moment in sports history has ever come close to. That's not to say that it's necessarily going to win this matchup because it's different. This is not it wasn't necessarily a sports moment. If you think of it from a personal standpoint, there's nothing that comes close. From a sports standpoint, it was just a game, right? The Mets ended up falling short in their bid to get back to the playoffs for the fourth straight year, I think it would have been. Um, and it was a great, try at the end of the year. And certainly it would have been poetic if they gotten in, but that ended
Well,
up,
we made a decision when we were doing the show back then. Let's not talk about 9/11 until we do a show.
yeah,
And so we were recording a show and we started talking about this in a similar way. Hey, we were on the phone, something happened. Hey, Phil, I gotta go. And Dave called me back and said, "Hey, this is our planes hitting the towers, and we may be at war, and I got to go." And we said that on the show, and I'll never forget Dave's reaction was, "Yeah, I don't remember that second phone call."
I still don't.
and I know what happened. I listened to
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I thought maybe you were, I didn't have all the clear news there, and you were saying two planes hit, and it could be terrorism or it could be war. I think he's
yeah,
overreacting here, and you were not overreacting at all. And yeah, just to hear you say, I for whatever reason you block that out, and who knows why
yeah,
psychologically, or I don't know, but just a real weird day, and we're
yeah,
undergoing some weird things right now in the country. But that was a weird 10 days, and we
yeah,
could use some sports now to get things back to normal, and we're not going to get them for a while, I don't think.
yeah, yeah. Well, the last thing I'll say on this, and I'll try and talk a little bit about the Game 6 and the '86 Mets again, but um, that I heard the first one hit, and I actually saw the second one hit, and the explosion actually came right at me. I could feel the heat of it. It was that close, so that's a little bit of why Mikey's home run still resonates. I will say one more thing. Well, maybe I'll talk about the '86 Mets, and I'll come back to that. Um, you and I have been watching the Mets for 50 years, give or take. Watching might be a loose definition there, but we've been Mets fans our whole lives, and other than '69, that neither of us obviously remembers being only a few months old, they still only had the one ring, and this was it. This was, I would be shocked if you could tell 17-year-old Dave that this would be the last time the Mets win the World Series until 2020. I'd be like, yeah, maybe I got to pick another team, or I don't know, but it's time to move. My wife always asked me, like, why the Mets? You can't just change teams. That's like saying I'm going to change wives. That's it doesn't work.
No, you're not. We were both fortunate enough to marry well above our pay grade, or however we want to define that.
Yep, punching outside our weight class, however you want to.
Yes, that
Absolutely.
works too.
Yep, yep. Um, so I definitely, I mean, that '86 team. I will say, and this may be the thing that clinches it for Mikey as I think about it, is a little bit of bittersweet to it, knowing the truth that a lot of the Mets on that team were not particularly great guys, and they had drug problems, and they partied a lot, and they were bad boys in the league. It's not my favorite thing to think about for what should be my favorite team. I like the '69 Mets. I like the '99 Mets, the scrappy, come from behind, never say die, underdog team, not the 108 win, we're going to beat everybody and we don't care how it looks. Um, to be, I'm not saying I don't love that moment. This is one of my favorite moments in sports. It's one of my favorite 2 moments in my life, according to this little thing we just did from a sporting event perspective. But if I'm going to choose between the two, maybe that's just enough of a negative. The other thing I would say from a lasting impact over the last, I'd say at least 15 years, every day on every 9/11 anniversary, I go back and watch a clip of Mike hitting that home run, and it always moves me to tears every time.
That's as good as bad a reasons I had when I was doing the bracket of misery, bracket of pain. That's as good a reason as any to have an event win and a bracket of joy.
I'm going to leave it
And
at that then.
you're gonna give it to Piazza, right?
Going to give it to Mikey.
That sounds pretty darn good to me. And congratulations to the other events that advanced as far as they did. I'm sure they'll be happy to know that they made it this far. I'm sure R.A. Dickey and Wilmer Flores and the Devils will be happy they were in the final 8. But Mike Baxter, I don't know. I don't know.
Baxter's going to be thrilled. I'm sure he's.
That may be his second career highlight. I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you missed the show number 2 where we got it from 8 to 4, you can listen to that, available on YouTube where you found this one. And if you want to hear me decipher that bracket of pain, you can hear what I take it from about 8 to the winner. But you can listen to that. That was on the first show. But we have other business tonight, and that's because in a couple days the NFL draft starts, and Dave's favorite team, you don't have to watch the show long to see them pick, at least if they stay where they're scheduled, currently have the number 4 pick, and that is the New York Giants. But I did tell Dave that I'd break the NFL news to him if you want to consider it news. The Patriots have traded. I didn't know he was still their possession, but traded Rob Gronkowski to the Buccaneers.
I saw a note actually that Gronk wanted to play with Brady, but I didn't realize it required a trade to make that happen.
Apparently it did. I wouldn't have known that either, but
all right.
That's what I've been told. And I'm predicting massive flop for Tampa Bay, and you're saying it might be successful.
I'm saying emphasis on might. I love Bill Barnwell's articles for ESPN, and I thought made a competent statistical analysis on why Brady's sort of less than stellar last season with the Patriots may not have been as bad as it looked. The supporting cast and a lot of drops and a bad offensive line and so forth. I think there was a few other points to it, but on a better team with better supporting cast, and of course Gronkowski is going to probably help that. That's his security blanket. That's his go-to guy, along with Edelman. But it's great. You sort of alluded to it as we were wrapping up the last segment. It's great to just have something sports related to talk about that actually is taking place. And and is not, WWE or what was it?
Hey,
Australian rules football, I think, is still going on somewhere. Come on, we need something.
I was watching the cornhole championships the other day. That was
There
good. That was
you
good
go.
stuff.
Are they wearing
Um,
masks? I got to find out.
so if it stays the order that's anticipated, Cincinnati's got the number one pick. And do you think there'll be a surprise there, or you think it's Joe Burrow?
I think it's Joe Burrow. I don't think there's any chance they do anything other than that.
Number two is Washington, and I think Chase Young is the anticipated guy to go there.
There's an outside chance because teams are stupid for quarterbacks, and because two teams picking 5 and 6 both seem to need one. There's an outside chance that somebody overpays and trades into number two, and that could make things interesting to see if they can get whether it's Tua or Herbert. Um, the main thing, well, there's two main things that would prevent them from doing that. One is there are two guys there, and two is neither one of them are a sure thing. Tua would be the clear number two pick if he was healthy, and all appearances are that he's healthy. But he's had an injury that is very hard to come back from. This hip displacement or whatever it was, hip pointer, I think is the correct term for it, right? That it's a very hard injury to come back from, and not many people have done so successfully. Um, he looks like he's healthy, and certainly, modern medicine is always improving and all that good stuff. So, you hope that he can, because he does look like a legitimate top talent. There's an outside chance. I don't think either team should. It should be Chase Young here. And both of those teams can probably get a good quarterback if they sit where they are. So that's what they should do. Will they? Probably, but not definitely.
Well, the Giants have four. Do they stay there or entertain offers, or what do you think happens?
Um, I fear what they will do, and I am almost positive I'm right, is they will stay there and overpick and take an offensive lineman. Uh,
Who do you have in mind?
I have in mind Isaiah Simmons, because he's a much better player than any offensive lineman there, and they can probably get a similar offensive lineman with their second pick. Maybe not quite as good as a Wirfs or a Wilfs or a Wilts or whatever their names are. Uh,
Wirfs, I think, is one of them.
Wirfs, yeah. The Smurfs, I don't know. I think it's Wills or Wirfs are the two that they're considering. It's probably whichever one of those is from Iowa, I forget. Is the one that they're leaning towards, apparently.
That would be Wirfs.
Yeah, I thought that was it. Anyway, there's four of them that are rated about the same, and then there's a drop off. I would like to see the Giants take Simmons. He looks like a potential game changer as a linebacker slash safety slash pass rusher
From Clemson.
from Clemson. Uh, he won the Butkus Award. Super fast, strong, smart. And then if they feel like Jones or Jackson isn't going to drop to them with their pick in the second round, then trade up. You can trade from 36 to 29 without giving up too much, and get one of the top 5 or 6 offensive tackles. And I don't think they would miss their 99th pick if they had to package that with 36 to get one of those picks.
Well, I'll let you go from answering to asking, and ask me about the Jets.
Yeah, so the Jets certainly need skill position players. I guess their best wide receiver is still a free agent. They may bring him back, they may not.
No, they got rid of him.
Oh, they did. Okay, I thought
He,
he was still out there.
no,
Okay, I apologize.
gone. They
All
did
right.
acquire Perryman from Tampa Bay,
Aha. Okay. Well, I,
who's oddly on about his 15 in 6 years. So I don't know
yeah.
what the whole scoop is there.
So what do you? I mean, they definitely need wide receiver help. They definitely need offensive line help. They probably need some defensive help. What do you think they do here?
I think it's got to be offensive line. Get Sam needs protection. There are offensive linemen out there. Like you said, the Jets pick 11th. There are 4 or 5 guys that Dave mentioned that seem to be. I don't even want to say the words "can't miss" when it comes to the Jets because they'll find a way to miss. But these seem to be solid players. I had Wills written down as a guy I think could be there and they should take. That's Jedrick Wills.
Yeah.
But there's also Andrew Thomas, a serviceable offensive lineman for sure from Georgia. Some of the guys you named. I had 3 names written down, and you touched on 2 of them, and that was
Yeah, Beckton's the other one.
those W's. Yeah,
Yeah.
they certainly are fine. If they're for some reason Simmons sneaks down, yeah, I'm fine taking him. There's a cornerback expected to go in the 7-8 range. If he's there and you think there's more value there, I have no problem with that. Their main needs are, I think, in order: offensive line, linebacker, defensive line. There is some talk about grabbing a wide receiver here because of Richie Anderson, but um, the top wide receivers are from great schools like Alabama and Oklahoma and LSU. And is that a positive or negative? They have real good quarterbacks throwing to them. They have great systems. They have other good wide receivers taking some of the coverage. I don't know. But what I concluded was there are going to be some darn good wide receivers in the second round. And pick one up then. You're probably not going to get a Jerry Judy in the 11 spot. I don't know if CD Lamb is good enough to um, to command that respect to go 11th. There's Jefferson from LSU, Ruggs from Alabama also. So I just think there's enough there where find the guy you really like but can get in the second round and go offensive line in the first round, something like wide receiver in the second or third round, and build from there. They have enough needs, but they also have the opportunity in the division now. This could be the worst division in football going forward. So why not win it next year?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have any problem with the Jets drafting at 11 and taking an offensive tackle because that's about where they're rated. If the Giants were picking 11th or the top tackle was rated, third or fourth, I'd say go get him. But they're overdrafting at that position. If there was a chance they could trade back to even a couple of picks and, trade back to 6 and let San Diego, or not San Diego, the Chargers leapfrog Miami.
Yeah. LA
and
Chargers. Yeah.
and get the guy they want, I'd be all over that. You could still probably get Simmons at 6 if they can figure out how to do that. But Gettleman has, I think, in his career never traded back. So I don't know what this little smokescreen was about the Giants being interested in Herbert. If anyone didn't see through that, then they just need to be fired from their job. If somebody said, "Oh, the Giants are going to take another quarterback," yeah. I will say, if Daniel Jones can figure out how not to fumble, he might actually end up being worth a 6th round.
He has talent.
Pick
Yes.
from last year. He clearly can throw the ball. He can move. He didn't throw that many interceptions for a rookie. He just put the ball on the field every other play, it seemed like, and that is a problem. It's not good to turn the ball over in the NFL, I'm told.
Can he avoid mono? That's key to quarterbacks in the second year.
I've heard that. So,
how did that not make the bracket? Yeah. Starting quarterback getting mono. That's got to be in my bracket of pain.
The bracket of pain. You mentioned can't miss picks. So I was looking, I did a little research here. I didn't tell you about this on the NFL draft over the last 10 years. And if you go to profootballreference.com and look at their draft thing, they have a measurement there called draft average value, and it's a cumulative measure. It's probably a football equivalent to the wins above replacement for the NFL version of that that baseball does. So in the last 10 years, I'm going to give you this.
Oh boy.
See if you can think what player has the most average value that's been drafted in the last 10 years. I will tell you this. It's a quarterback who has won a Super Bowl.
I got to go with Mahomes, no?
Mahomes has, because it's cumulative, no, Mahomes hasn't been.
Oh, cumulative. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mahomes is up there on an average basis, and he's up there for his individual year, but he's not been in the league long enough to get there.
Was this winning quarterback a starter at the time?
At the time he won the Super Bowl, yes.
Yeah.
And he still is.
I just thought he may have been a backup, but
Nope. You're thinking the
drafted within the last 10 years and won a Super Bowl.
Yep.
I feel like this should be jumping out at me, and
that's all right. He was not a first round pick. He was not a second round pick.
That's why it's not jumping at me.
He is a Pro Bowl player, and I don't think there's any doubt he's one of, if not the best player drafted in the last 10 years. It's Russell Wilson.
Well, I needed 10 more seconds. I was just I wouldn't fib about these. I was just about to say Russell Wilson. It came to me as you were saying second round, but oh well.
In that draft, the Seahawks with their second round pick got Bobby Wagner, and then I think they had another. No, it's not in the top 10. I also looked at the top 10 picks each year, and so that was the 2012 draft. They got the two best picks in value for that draft, and neither one was a first round pick.
And that's hard to do, and maybe some teams are improving what they do in the draft, but there's opportunities there in later rounds.
But it's interesting that what a crapshoot is. You look at it, in these 10 years, there's only 1 year where the top 5 picks were all the top 5 value picks were all first round picks in the top of the first round, and that's 2011. Cam Newton is first.
Okay.
First overall pick. Von Miller is the second most valuable player. He was second.
That's a good one.
J.J. Watt was the 11th pick. He's the third most valuable. And then Julio Jones and Patrick Peterson were 6th and 5th, and they were they're the 4th and 5th most valuable players in that draft.
There's some guys who may be wearing the yellow jackets.
Yeah. You look at 2019 is still too early to say, but it looks, based on last year alone, Kyler Murray was the best player drafted, and Nick Bosa.
Better than Bosa?
Better than Bosa based on whatever this average draft value, whatever it is.
You could. I would be happy with Bosa going forward.
I think I would pick him too, but interesting. Daniel Jones was the 5th best player.
I'm pretty sure Quinnen Williams was not the 3rd best.
Quinnen Williams was not in the top 10. If you go back to last year, 2018, that is, the best value you should probably be able to get based on him being in the Super Bowl last year, or in the playoffs last year, and the MVP of the league.
Baltimore had the best value.
Lamar Jackson, the last pick of the first round. So not bad. The second best pick was Darius Leonard, the linebacker that the Colts got, a second round pick. Then Quentin Nelson, the guard for the Colts, and Barkley was the 4th best value for the Giants with the number 2 pick. So and then interesting. I'll just give you the top picks, top value picks of the next few years. 2017, it was Alvin Kamara, the 3rd round pick for the Saints. Just edging out Mahomes in total value accumulated to date. And in 2016, it was Dak Prescott, the 4th round pick for the Cowboys. Another great pick for the Saints. I told you I'd just give you the first one, but I'm lying.
No,
Uh,
I'm
Michael
listening.
Michael Thomas was the second most valuable player, drafted second round, uh, and he was the 47th pick of the draft, which speaks to your point of the Jets should be able to find good value. The fourth most valuable player in that draft was Tyreek Hill, drafted in the fifth round by the Chiefs.
There's Yeah, and that's what makes these scouts and guys doing the drafting, general managers or whoever their gurus are, that makes them so valuable. They can find that guy
Yep.
or two.
The
And
sixth most valuable
don't
player
miss on
was
them.
Goff, the first overall pick. The fifth most valuable player has been Wentz, who probably would be higher if not for Nick
It-
Foles. Uh,
well, yeah, not for injury. Yeah,
exactly.
both ways. That. Well, now that we've looked at the Jets and the Giants, we will take a look at the Steelers and their draft prospects. We have our Super Steeler fan, nephew Kevin, Kevin Hall here with us. So, how's it going, Kevin?
It's going good. I appreciate you letting me on the show, and I'm ready to talk about the train wreck and the roller coaster ride that is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Letting you on? Yeah, and anyone can get on anytime, basically.
Appreciate it.
All right, so the Steelers somehow do not have a first round pick. Can you remind the listeners why they don't have a first round pick?
Yes, so we were supposed to have the 18th overall pick this year, but now the Miami Dolphins do because we traded away our first round pick and I believe some other picks in the later rounds to get Minka Fitzpatrick. And at first, I wasn't really interested in the idea because we were 0-2. The season looked pretty dim now that Big Ben was gone. But we traded away Minka, and he right from the start he was a spark for our defense. Basically, I think in the 49er game he forced the fumble and got a pick, and he just kept that same energy throughout the whole season. And hopefully, we'll have him for the rest of his career.
It's a pretty good first round pick if you can get a career starter out of it.
Yeah, for sure. He was an all pro or at least close to being one last year. So right from the start, he fit in well. I think this is going to be his third or fourth year now. So we just got to keep building the defense around him.
Any chance on Thursday we see the Steelers somehow get back into the first round?
No way. This team has never really traded up, with the exception for Devin Bush last year, but that was only 10 picks. We usually don't go out of our way to make some big change unless we absolutely have to. And I feel pretty comfortable that we'll probably just get some depth players in the later rounds and we won't really need to trade up.
So the first pick is 49 for the Steelers. What are the biggest needs at that point?
So a lot of the fans are basically saying that we should go after a quarterback because having to sit through Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges for a whole season will do that to anybody. It was inconsistency. The future wasn't looking bright without Ben because they were just making mistakes that they would in preseason, and they had no time to develop. A lot of people are saying we should get Jalen Hurts, but I don't really see it. I think we want to build up Mason Rudolph because that's what we do. We had something with Landry Jones going on. We just kept trying to build him up and up and up, and if it doesn't work, we just let him go. But I can see us going maybe like a wide receiver to give Juju some depth. We have James Washington and Deontay Johnson, but besides that, I think we need to bolster up that so Ben has more options next year.
Well, there's a lot of options well, not a lot of options at quarterback. There's certainly a lot of options at wide receiver. And the analysis I've seen, guys like Hurts and Fromm from Georgia are looking like third round picks maybe. Obviously, quarterbacks usually get overdrafted, so
Yeah.
it seems like you could probably wait and get somebody if you wanted to get a quarterback this year to compete and maybe to sit and compete down the road.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
exactly.
wide
We
receiver
can always
options.
just do next year too. It's going to
Yep.
be a quarterback loaded draft next year with more people going in. People are going to draft high on like Trevor Lawrence, and there'll probably be a lot more other quarterbacks that fall into place. So I don't really see a rush for this year. I think Ben's going to come back. I don't think he's going to be like the same player he used to be, but if he's like maybe a 25 touchdown, 4,000-yard quarterback. We'll be fine, and hopefully that'll last us a year or two.
Now, what receivers do you have in mind if you're looking that way? I would assume Judy and Lamb and
No,
Ruggs
no,
and
no, no.
Jefferson.
They're
They're all
gone in the
gone.
first.
Also,
They're gone
yeah.
in the first. There was this guy out of TCU that looked pretty interesting. His name is Jalen Rager. A lot of people have us taking him because we like to go smaller at receiver. Take Antonio Brown, Eli Rogers, Deontay Johnson, for example. And we have a history of just drafting low and making them into pretty solid players. Like Martavis Bryant, he was a third rounder, and although his career wasn't that long, he was still an exceptional wide receiver too for about 3 or 4 years. So I can see us taking maybe Jalen Rager. I kind of want us to take a running back. I was thinking more towards that because James Conner is good. Don't get me wrong, but he can't last the full season, and he hasn't been able to. So people like Jonathan Taylor seem pretty good. But honestly, if we just get one of those skill positions, I think we'll be okay because I think we're pretty stacked on defense.
Yeah, and running back is one of those positions now that seems to be uh, undervalued by most NFL teams. So
Yeah,
somebody like Taylor or Dobbins might be somebody that could drop into the mid 40s.
J.K.
Even if
Dobbins,
they're
yeah, he's
ranked as
like a
a
good fit
potentially
too.
first round talent, right?
Yeah, and honestly, we already have like Benny Snell and James Conner.
Yep.
So maybe he'll be like a second down option, but we like to switch it up. We don't like one consistent back. Ever since Bell left, we ran Bell into the ground, so that's probably why he's not as good with the Jets. Sorry about that. But we don't really like to rely on one specific player, or at least we didn't last year before Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell both left. Now we're trying to spread it out more because I think we realize now that that's how you're going to win a Super Bowl. Because if you rely on like specific players and they're not there, then the locker room can change. People are going to say they want the ball more. There's going to be drama like that. So we got to really spread it out if we want success.
Well, you can't come on the Flick and the Bozman show and not be hit with some trivia questions. So I think Dave's got something lined up for you here. Give it a whirl.
Let's see. It might be
This should
before I was born, but I'll give it a shot.
This should be very gettable. It kind of dovetails with the comment you made as you first came on the show. You alluded to the Steelers as a roller coaster ride, and I think you may have even used the word train wreck.
Yeah, well, off the field, it's a chain wreck with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, but it's gotten a little bit better.
That is true. That is true. So here's sort of the opposite of that, and I think the answer is more startling than the question. Since 1969, name Pittsburgh's head coaches.
Oh, easy. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowell, and Mike Tomlin. Three of them.
That's it. It's just startling when you stop and think about it. 3 coaches in 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, we take that stuff for granted. I think Steeler fans tend to because every single year I see people saying fire Tomlin. We need to move on. He choked us this game. And I think the only really negative thing I have about Tomlin is every year he chokes away, a game that we should have beat the guys by 20. Like we lost to the Raiders in 2018 when they were like 2-14 or whatever. We lost to the Bears like 2017 when they were like 3-13. So we tend to overlook our opponents, I would say, but Tomlin is still really good. I mean, he put up with Antonio Brown for 9 years, and he made him seem like he was, like a team player, which obviously we know he's not. But Tomlin, I think Steeler fans need to appreciate more because when he's gone, 5 years down the line, we'll be looking back at him as like a legend rather than, a choke artist because he is one of the best head coaches in the league.
Yeah, and I think that feeds into one of my theories of being a good coach is just getting guys to buy into your message and getting a guy like Antonio Brown, or I think of the Giants with Odell Beckham. If you could find somebody that could coach Odell Beckham and get him to play hard every play and not be an idiot,
Yeah,
You have a Hall of Fame player.
but you had Ben McAdoo and Pat Schmier, during his
Yeah.
campaign, and obviously neither of those were going to work out with him. And
Yeah.
obviously, Freddie Kitchens, he's had pretty bad luck with coaches.
Yeah.
I don't hate Odell. I just think he needs to stay more focused on his craft, and I think he's obviously not as bad as Antonio Brown is, but he has the potential to be like an all-time great if he's
Yeah.
just able to, focus on what he wants to do, stay off the field, try to work around his teammates. Because him and Jarvis Landry, like they're like best friends in real life.
Right.
They had like no connection last year. Like they couldn't build off each other. Like it was just an off year with them, with
Yep.
Baker.
Well, Kevin, we appreciate it, and we knew you'd do a good job talking about the Steelers, and we will see what happens Thursday and over the weekend with all the draft picks, and hopefully we can have you on again. And Dave will see the fans, or at least hear the fans, and hear their emails
There
at
you go. Thank you guys so much.
flick5@gmail.com.
I appreciate it, you guys. Good luck on the rest of the podcast.
All right. Thanks, Kevin. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.